He's going around, and yes, he's yelling. Absolutely, that's fine. But none of you would like it. If 30 guys chased you, you would get scared and run away. It makes no sense for so many of you. Not you, the young dudes. It makes no sense. Simple. So just don't do it. Ignore it and walk away. Yes, you should. Because according to your sunnah, Muhammad did too. When he was insulted, he walked away. That's what your sunnah says.
When Abu Bakr heard someone was insulting the Prophet Muhammad, what did he do? Tell me.
Are you going to follow Abu Bakr or Muhammad? Which one? Who is your Rasul? Muhammad or Abu Bakr? Who's your Rasul? You will follow Muhammad. So in that case, follow Muhammad and walk away. There you go. Because Abu Bakr is not your Rasul. That's why. Simple. Isa is my Rasul. Yes.
Just one thing that's got to be fair is, this, it triggers the younger lads, right? Not as older guys, it doesn't trigger us, it triggers the younger lads. The point I'm making is, if someone knows that it's a trigger point, yeah? And when you talk about religion, it's a bit, it plays on people's emotions, yeah?
I would agree with you if this place was not somewhere where apparently you can go and espouse whatever opinion you want.
What if, right? Like today she's got these play cards and, talking about pedophiles and blah, blah, blah. Then Muslims started doing it, and then Jews started doing it. It's equally as bad, isn't it?
If I can be frank with you, when Muslims go around saying that Jesus Christ was a Muslim, that he wasn't God, that he was a prophet, if we wanted to spin it that way, we could say, but listen, if we wanted to, we could go around saying the Muslims are insulting our gods. And then we could start following the Muslims around who say he's the prophet. See? No, we say you are, because you're diminishing his godhood. If I said Allah is not God, but he's a jinn, for example, that's a problem.
No, but are we using the derogatory term?
Well, yes, you are. So by divide, I could say.
If we never said Jesus, if we said Jesus is a pedophile or that, because what we're doing, just hear me out.
If I said,
then what I'm doing is I'm directly aiming. Derogatory term where I know it's going to hurt.
Okay, wait.
That's what she's doing. That's what I'm saying.
If I said Allah is the Malaika, is that insulting?
The problem here is, look, this is what this is. David.
Could you answer that by any chance?
I will. Right. How I take it. If you're not using a derogatory term like a paedophile or X like that, then I'd say.
But calling God a Malaika isn't derogatory.
No, hold on a second. We're talking about derogatory terms.
Yeah, I'm telling you. Really?
Yeah, I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Because, no. That's your opinion.
Okay.
And that's your right to believe that. So I'm okay with that. Because that's you, not me. I'm not saying that. So it has no bearing on me. What I'm saying is derogatory terms. That's what I'm facing. Well, look, David, we got an understanding. We're cool. You shake hands, walk away. One thing, I'm missing your bloody ding-dongs with lamins when they're starting.
My ding-dongs with lammin?
Your conversations you have.
Well, if you want to change it up like that, that's fine. But I've said my piece, so I won't repeat it again.
Forget that. I don't want to talk about that anymore. That's
okay.
That's done. I'm talking about lammin. I miss your.
I had one last week.
When are you going to become Muslim? Come on,
Never.
David, come on, man. Come on. Look at it.
I told you, it's all about Christ, man.
I'll tell you something,
Yeah.
You're a logical guy, and I got faith in you.
Tell me, how do you take Surah 3:55?
I don't know.
Where it?
I'm not learning.
One second. Where it tells the Muslims that the followers of Isa are going to be superior until the day of judgment over everybody else. Like what does that mean?
He knows this. My brother, he's Imran.
Huh? I am Imran, yes, 55. Yeah, what does that mean?
Where's the problem?
So the followers of Isa are going to be superior until the day of judgment. Who are they?
The true followers
of Isa. Who are they?
So part of them were the disciples with him, people who truly believed in his message.
Okay.
There are even people during the time of the Prophet who believed in him.
Do they have a name?
So Waraqa bin Nawfal, for example, one of them.
and he was a...
He was a Christian.
Okay, so the Christians are the ones who will be following Isa and be superior.
Basically, what he's saying, who recognized the message and believed in Prophet Muhammad. That's what he's saying.
No, Isa, not Muhammad.
No. So what he's saying, like Waraqa bin Nawfal, so he was Christian, but he accepted Islam.
No, he didn't.
He didn't accept Islam because the revelation before Waraqa's death, before he deceased, the revelation in its entirety was not clear. Even the Prophet ﷺ did not believe that he was a prophet. Initially. But Waraqa, you know, he said that when they were driving, Aisha is in about, I think it's about 45. Yeah, so Waraqa was not, but he told the Prophet, even though the narration is weak, by the way, because it comes from Siyar, I think it comes from Siyar ibn Hisham. But still, the understanding is that Waraqa, being one of these Christians, he told the Prophet that I will follow you when these people will drive you away from your home and when they will fight you. I will still follow you because I think you're the Prophet.
Okay, so ultimately, there are Christians who are carved out to be superior until the day of judgment, according to Allah. Okay, fair enough.
So you don't believe, for example, that there are Unitarian Christians nowadays?
Sorry?
Do you believe that there are Unitarian Christians?
So Waraqa would not have been a Unitarian Christian because apparently he was writing the Gospels in Arabic, and the Gospels don't talk about Unitarian gods.
But the Gospels in Trinity came after. Trinity came in the Nicaea long after.
No, that's not true.
No, that's not true.
That's not true.
It came before the time of the Prophet. But the thing
is, Nicaea is before that too.
That's what I'm saying. I'm taking your side. I'm saying
no, sorry, no. I'm thinking about something else. It did come.
It did.
Nicaea was before then. About 200 years or something.
No, so I'm taking your side. I'm confirming what you have just said.
Okay.
The thing is, there were a lot of sects within Arabia that were not recognized by the church back at the time.
I have heard of some Gnostics, sure.
Yeah.
Waraqa might have been one, they say, but he was writing the Gospels apparently in Arabic. So the Gospels would imply that he was writing Matthew, Luke, and John. And if you read those,
what is your proof for that?
Huh?
What is your proof for that?
As far back as the 1st century, the Gospels were always regarded.
David,
all right.
I'll see you soon.
As far back as the 1st century, the Gospels were always regarded as being Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. In the Didache, which is no, it's not, because in the Didache, which was written between 65 and 85 AD, you have the articles of faith of Christians, and the Gospels of Matthew, Luke, and John are mentioned inside of it. In the year 150, for example, you have Tatian of Syria, who wrote the Diatetron, which is supposed to be the first Assyrian translation of the Gospels, the 4 Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, combined into one harmony. So it has always been known as far back as the 1st century leading into the 2nd that the 4 Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, were always the canonical Gospels.
Shall I tell you why it's a very risky claim?
Why is it?
Because when were the Gnostic Gospels written?
The Gnostic Gospel may have been written at the same time as some of the other Gospels.
Thank you so much.
But even in
No,
listen very carefully though. Here's the part you're missing. Even in the book of John, people speculate that the book of John, the Gospel of John, was actually written to address the Gnostics.
That proves my point.
So
that proves my point.
It doesn't prove your point.
It does.
Because no Christian, no early apostolic Christians, no disciples or students of the disciples ever thought the Gnostics were correct.
Okay. So do you have a certificate that proves that Waraqa was accredited by the church back at the time? We don't.
Do they give you certificates for that? I don't think so.
Not certificate, not like a written one, but do we have a
Waraqa might not even have existed, so who knows?
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
According to you, he might have not even existed. According to us, he existed. He was the cousin of
Khadija.
The Prophet, Khadija. So we don't, just by saying that he was a Christian, we don't accredit him being a Trinitarian. We don't accredit him being a follower of the church, of a certain church, because we know as a fact that the speech or the debunking speech, so to speak, addressed to the Christians in their entirety, part of that speech within the Quran itself would be addressed actually to what you call agnostics.
No, Gnostics.
Gnostics, sorry. That Gnostic Gospels, Gnostic teachings, like for example the calendarianism. Yeah?
The what, sorry?
The people who referred Mary as being, you know, a deity.
Okay.
So calendarianism was known to be a sect within Arabia and Sinai.
I don't know if there's any evidence to suggest that at the time of Muhammad they were functioning in high regard.
Before the time.
Right, so then it would make no sense for the Quran to address them when they weren't there anymore.
Why is that?
Because if they weren't there anymore in Arabia
I'm not saying that they
at the time
weren't.
of Muhammad, well,
I'm
is
saying
there
that
any...
I'm saying that there were sects that were documented at least 300 after Jesus. Yeah, a certain sect. I'm
Yes.
just bringing that as an example.
Okay.
Now, taking that example and projecting it or manifesting it on possible other sects, cults, call them whatever you like, but they existed back at the time. Now, Waraqa, we don't have an exclusive biography about him. We don't know what he believed, yeah. But there's no evidence for him being a Trinitarian to start with. There's no evidence for him having written the Gospels of Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John. Now that might apply if we could attribute Waraqa to be, being a follower of a certain church, but we don't. So you can't project that idea.
There's no evidence of Waraqa existing beyond a few mentions of him in like what, Bukhari?
So no, when you say that there is no evidence for him, you mean from
Existing.
From a Christian point of view.
Well, don't forget that the stories of Waraqa, as they are told in the Sirah, come after Muhammad died, not before. Like, did Muhammad...
All hadith and Quran came, the narrations came after.
Well, that's an even wider problem where we can talk about how generally you might not be able to trust any hadith, potentially, due to the proliferation of hadiths and fake hadiths, right? That's different arguments.
Yeah.
When it comes to Waraqa, in the same way that there's no proof of him being a Trinitarian or whatever might have you, or writing Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, that would imply...
No, but because you were specific with your claim, brother.
Yes, because it said he is writing the Gospels,
So the
and
Gospels-
historically,
the
nothing
Gospels
are regarded
applies-
as the Gospels apart from Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
Just hear me out. Gospels, the name in and by itself, does not necessitate the canonized Gospels, does it? When I say just
Well,
Gospels,
it
Gospels
does
abstract.
because it's
No, doesn't.
so. Do you know any non-canonized work that are referred to as the Gospels anytime between the 1st and the 6th century? Any?
You have the Gospel of Mary Magdalene.
But those are not Gospels.
Gospels. You
Yeah,
have, I'm giving you.
Do you know any
examples.
work that
giving you
contains
examples.
non-canonical Gospels?
I
Right?
can't
That are
speak-
regarded
I can't
as
speak
Gospels.
when you keep interrupting.
Well, you were doing the same thing to me just now.
I mentioned to you there are the Gospels.
By the way, I wasn't even done talking because you talked for a while and I was answering your questions,
No,
right?
go on.
So, no evidence Waraqa even existed because they all come later. There is no evidence that Waraqa was a Unitarian. There's also no evidence that when people regarded the Gospels in the very first 4 centuries of Christianity, particularly after the Council of Nicaea, that they ever had any doubt that Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John were the 4 canonicals and they didn't accept anything else like the pseudo-apocrypha of James or whoever the hell you might state. In fact, it even showcases to you the fact that people wrote fake Gospels and attributed them to the disciples showcases that there was a standard set from the early church. Sorry?
As John.
What do you mean as John?
As the case of John, who
No,
fabricated the
nobody
That's another
ever
discussion.
said. Nobody
No.
ever said
That's
that
another
First
discussion.
John, Second John, and Third John were not
That's another
canonical.
discussion.
No Christian ever made
That's
that
another
claim.
discussion.
So you're wrong about that.
No, I'm not
but
wrong.
in the same
I'm
way,
not wrong.
that
But
showcases
let
to
us-
you. Let me finish.
No, just
that
let
all
us-
of the
let us
early
focus on the
Gospels had to be accredited by the disciples. So there was a standard already set from the very first century.
Okay,
From
so
that, and
back
that
again.
comes from Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
Are you done?
Now I'm done.
Okay, thank you. So, what's your name, by the way?
David.
David, nice to meet you.
That's me too.
Back to the original question. Now, you dismiss every evidence, even though if it's
There's
weak.
no evidence. None. I've looked.
What's evidence for you?
Show me.
How would you define an
Show
evidence?
me
No, just
any
can I
church authority that
can I get to the point, because
you
I
just
didn't
asked me
even-
for evidence. And
I didn't even complete my question.
okay, go for it.
So
Let me know you're done, then I can answer.
It would be graceful of you to let us have a dialogue instead of monologue.
Let me know.
Yeah. So, what is evidence for you to prove or that you would accept as Waraqa existing during the time of the Prophet? How would you define that evidence? What criteria do you have?
I would have to know what church he belonged to, who the hell taught him the gospel, where he learned it from, and how he was somehow translating the gospels from Arabic, from Greek into Arabic, despite the fact that Muslims will tell you that the first Arabic Bible was actually written in the 9th century. So how was he like somehow 200 years ahead of the work that will be done way later? And in what kind of Arabic was he writing it in? Was it Syriac?
You didn't give me the criteria.
So, show me what church that Waraqa was a part of.
Hang on.
You asked me the question. You told me I didn't answer you. Let me say it again.
Calm down.
Show me the church you belong to.
What criteria?
I want to see a church. I want to see some writings from him, and I want to see his original gospels he was writing in Arabic.
Okay.
So show me his work.
Okay, so did I claim that he wrote the gospels in Arabic?
That's what your hadith say.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, it does.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, it does. I can show you.
Okay, show me.
There you go.
You show me the Arabic version, please.
I'll show you whatever you like.
Are you going to Ibn Ishaq?
Nope. I'm going to go straight to the big man, Bukhari.
Okay.
So, so this is Sahih Bukhari 6982. Khadija then accompanied him.
Go. Where is the hadith?
It's right here, Sahih Bukhari 6982.
That's not the hadith though. That's the explanation of the hadith, brother.
No,
that's the hadith.
This
That's the hadith.
Narrated by Aisha.
David, you don't teach me my religion as I don't teach you yours.
Nope.
This is the hadith there. Bob, hang on, I'll show you.
So,
okay.
when we go, we see that it says here that Khadija then accompanied him, to her cousin, Waraqa bin Nawfal. That's a very long name. Waraqa was the son of her paternal uncle, i.e. her father's brother, who during the pre-Islamic period became a Christian and used to write the Arabic writings and used to write the Gospels in Arabic as much as Allah wished for him to write. There you go.
Can I just borrow this first?
Go for it.
I don't want to talk to Siraj.
So I'm going to need that to prove there was a Waraqa.
No, that's fine.
All right.
I'm doing overtime.
Siraj, lower your gaze, Siraj, lower your gaze. Don't look at a woman, lower your gaze, look at the floor.
Okay, so this.
Lower your gaze.
I just went there.
Look at the floor when you're going there.
I just went there to talk.
Okay, but why are you talking? Look at the floor.
About the religion. I'm not looking at this.
Why not?
Come on, Mr. Man.
Hey man, that's what your student says.
Come
What?
Calm down.
I'm always calm, Siraj.
You twisting now.
So you're not supposed to lower your gaze? Or am I?
I know, I have to.
Wait, is it
I'm
for
not
every
looking.
woman or the Prophet's wives? Because you know the Quran isn't very
It's
clear
for
on that.
Even the women have to lower their gaze.
Oh really?
Even the woman, not just the man.
Okay, but luckily she isn't a Muslim, so you lower your gaze.
Okay, I stand corrected.
No worries. So, to answer your question, just get me the gospel, please, and then let me see it. And then, as long as it's in a style that is like pre-Uthmanic, because you're aware of the recension in 652, right? So this is happening in the year 610, I believe. So if the writing style of these Arabic like gospels are pre-Uthmanic, right? Then yes, you can say, okay, somebody before.
What do you mean pre-Uthmanic?
So the writing style in the Arabic is pre-Uthmanic. Right, so it won't have
What
any.
do you mean pre-Uthmanic?
It won't have any diacritical marks, and it won't be written in the Quraysh dialects.
That's not how you know it's from the time of the Prophet. By the way.
No, I said
that's another topic.
I
but
said.
I'm just telling you.
I said pre-Uthmanic. Pre-Uthmanic implies that it is written before 6. Well, there isn't. The reason
there's Hijazi, for example.
So
the one that was used by the Sahaba during the time of the Prophet was the Hijazi text. It isn't called pre-Uthmanic.
Arguably,
but I understand.
Arguably, the very first Quran commissioned by Abu Bakr that Zayd wrote before the recension would have been technically pre-Uthmanic, implying that it wasn't done during his recension.
I think we're hung up on semantics here because it's not
No,
called
I'm being
pre-Uthmanic.
very specific.
No, it's not called pre-Uthmanic.
You're familiar with the recension. He ordered it to be written again in the Qurayshi dialect. You're familiar with that?
I'm familiar with it.
Okay, so in order
Just
for
telling
me,
you, it's not called. There is no text that is called or has the title pre-Uthmanic text.
it's a labeling. Because it comes from the
you came
time
up with now.
before Uthman.
that you
No,
came up
I
with
think
now.
it's used scholarly as well, pre-Uthmanic.
so.
It is.
No, it's not.
So again, unless you
I
can
don't think
show
so.
me
There's Hijazi,
that gospel.
There's Hijazi text. There's the Hijazi style, yeah, that doesn't have the dots and what have you and all these.
Yeah, but Uthmanic texts don't have dots either.
That's called the Hijazi, the genuine Hijazi text.
What time period are we talking about here?
We're talking before the compilation even. So if you go back, for example,
So when Muhammad was alive.
to the poetry of Nabat, yeah, the Nabatean poetry, for example, that was written in the Hijazi text.
Okay.
Yeah, the Yemeni poetry and what have you from the Christian kingdom back before the time of the Prophet, that was the Hijazi text. The writings or documentations during the time of the Prophet and after, a little bit after, before making the doors, that's not called pre-Uthmanic, because when you say that, you're leaving a gap between Uthman and the time of Abu al-Aswad al-Du'ali.
Who's that?
Abu al-Aswad al-Du'ali. He was the one who presented the dots and what have you and these.
Oh yeah, like later in like the 680s.
Thank you so much.
So when you mention this Hijazi text, that's what I'm referencing when it comes to being pre-Uthmanic. Okay?
Yeah, that's
so,
fine.
So,
We're in
but-
agreement, we're in
so
agreement. We're
again,
just- yeah, we're in agreement.
again, to prove Waraqa exists, I'm going to need to see that original work.
Yeah.
There's a quote by a church father against heretics where he says that if they want, I'm paraphrasing, but if they want to essentially like legitimize themselves, right, as having teachings that link back to the apostles and Jesus Christ, they're going to need to present their evidence. They need to bring their schools, bring their writings, bring their scholars, and then we can compare that's what we have.
Okay. So
that's what I said.
does that negate the existence of Waraqa, or does it negate him being a true Christian?
I just don't believe it existed.
but
Because
that doesn't-
narrative-wise,
Logically speaking, that what you have just mentioned, the criteria you have put forth, do not actually negate his existence.
well, if you want to prove it to me, I'm going to have to see it.
David, they might negate, however, him being a true Christian or an accredited Christian by the church. That's fine.
For example, like you know how you mentioned earlier that I don't know if you'd have an accredited Christian by a church, but okay, we have
No, but I mean, following the teachings of whoever of the church fathers,
You know when
or
you-
whichever church you would like to refer to.
You know when you mentioned that there were these people who believed that Mary was a deity.
Hear me out. So when I say, for example, a certain Christian here, would claim a certain thing that's not in keeping or is in conflict with the teachings of the church, that does not make them less of a person, but they would make them less Christian, of course. That I agree
It
with.
would depend. The only thing that really makes you less Christian is if you deny the deity of Christ, because that's what screws you
I would
up.
argue about that, because if
No,
somebody
you
would,
can't.
if somebody would, for example, dismiss the Trinity,
They can't be a Christian.
they can't be Christian.
The reason being
Can they be Christian?
No. The
Thank you so
reason
much.
being, there are ramifications. If you dismiss the fact that Christ is God, then you're going to have to say that all the things that he did, that are actions that are exclusive only to God, were done by a created thing. And that actually basically creates polytheism. Now Christ becomes a separate God, and you have the Father as a separate God, and then who knows what you're going to do with the spirits. That's why we say no.
Yeah, that's fine, and I'm agreeing with you.
Okay.
We're in agreement.
So
but
when it comes,
you understand the point I'm presenting here. My point is that if you don't have a certain document about a certain Christian, having produced works, for example, that were in line or in keeping with the teachings of the church, if they had, for example, presented an agnostic gospel, that would not make them a hoax as persons. That would still make them probably less Christian, not Trinitarian, not following the mainstream Christianity. That I agree with. But I don't agree with you dismissing his existence entirely.
Unless you can tell me why I should believe in Waraqa. Because, for example, you know how...
you to believe in him.
No, but again, I am saying
You're the one who
I
presented
don't
that.
believe in him, and there's nothing that you can show me to prove he actually existed, like his works, for example.
Okay.
When you talked about earlier the Christians that supposedly had Mary as a deity,
Yeah.
Is there any group of pre-Nicene or pre-Islamic Christians that you can point me to that were expecting another messenger? Because technically,
How is that even relevant?
because you know what, when you read that hadith just now, I can show it to you again if you want to see.
Yeah.
But Waraqa is quick to jump to the conclusion that what Muhammad has received is the same nemus, the same honor that Moses received.
Yeah.
Right? So he's going to have to, so effectively, if he is a Christian, number one, he's going to have to prove, or you're going to have to showcase to
He
me.
claimed to be a Christian.
Well, apparently,
That doesn't necessarily make the church, accredit or agree to his teaching.
is there any church,
Yeah.
that was expecting a prophet with the same nemus as Moses? Any
Christian church?
and bring me a Gnostic if you want, because the Gnostics are a little bit different.
I can't, but I'm telling you,
Okay.
there's a possibility. It's not a proof. It's
Okay.
not an evidence, but there's a possibility that there might have been. But since we don't have
If
their
you,
works,
if you can bring them, then it's a problem.
no, that's fine. But if we don't have even their works, there's no point in arguing anything here, is there?
So Waraqa here says, what have you seen? The prophet described what he had seen. Waraqa said this is the same nemus. Namus, sorry. From my understanding, the namus means an honor, or a blessing, or an anointing.
And namus is, I would say, probably some people will understand it as a kind of, revelation.
Yes, something about line. The IE says Gabriel, the angel who keeps secrets, but that's unlikely what that actually means. But that's fine.
Yeah.
So that's my issue with the Waraqa.
So your point is that I would have to bring forth textual evidence.
The writings, for example.
Of writings of Waraqa himself.
Sure thing, for example.
Okay.
Or?
And the second one.
I'll take either or.
Sorry?
I'll take either or, to be honest with you.
You'll take the or. Okay.
I'll take either or. The existence
or the existence
of a
Christian sect
who were
predating Islam that
who
were
were
waiting for a prophet.
A prophet with the same nemus as Moses. Yes.
I am not aware of those.
I don't think they exist personally. I would have I sometimes look up like early Christian heresies, and I've never come across one that was waiting for a new prophet. I have seen a few.
So why did the Jews, and this is if that, I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Why did the Jews ask John the Baptist?
Yes.
That if he was the prophet.
Yeah.
What prophet was that?
The Messiah.
No, because they asked about three persons, David.
Yeah, they asked about Elijah. They asked about, was it Moses?
No. They asked if he was Elijah, if he was the Messiah, or if he was the prophet. Why did they ask that?
Do you know which verse we're looking for here?
It's in John, I'm quite sure, but I'm terrible with numbers.
Okay, that's fine.
Even with the Quran. I remember the entire surah, for example. I don't remember. I
don't know who the prophet that they were making reference to is in particular, but there's like a mountain of evidence to suggest that like there was no one coming after.
By the way, I'm sorry to cut you.
Sorry
to cut you short, but that is not an answer to your question, by the way. Because we're referring here to Jews, and to be fair, you asked me about Christians, and I'm referring here to Jews. So it's not an answer.
There's a relation, right? Because technically Christianity comes out of Judaism. The very first Christians were Jews.
True. And even the John's followers, Sabi'un, for example, that we still have in Iraq.
The ones who claim to be John's followers, right? But
claim, I don't know, but they are quite sure about their beliefs.
The Manichaeans, well, actually, wait. Manichaeans?
Manda'is.
So there's two kinds. The Mandeans. Are you talking about the ones who followed Mani, or are you talking about the ones who followed John?
No, the ones who followed John.
Okay. Wait, you're going?
It's not my people.
Oh, you want Mani?
Mani is
okay.
Manichaeism is an Iranian.
Yeah. You're Iranian?
No, not Iranian.
Okay.
They're Iraqi. They're found only in Iraq. And Manda'is.
No, Mandaeans. I'm talking about Manichaeans.
Manichaeans are something that's slightly different, 2nd century. Okay, fair enough. But again, you have the same issue where.
But they're still waiting for a prophet, and they're still waiting for the. No, they're still waiting for the Messiah. Sorry.
Yeah, but I think there's an issue there where we're not aware. So, for example, if they claim to follow John, right? Yeah. John already identified that Christ was the Lamb of God. So if they claim to follow him, they would instinctively follow the Lamb of God as well. But they don't. They're sort of like blend the belief in John and baptism with a bit of Gnosticism as well, which is why they're a bit like further away.
Yeah, that's fine. But we are discussing about certain subgroups or,
Yeah,
or, you
so-
know, people who probably don't have a lot of followers nowadays.
From my findings,
Yeah.
what you would see is that all of these subgroups, right? So, when I told you before that in the first century, there's an understanding that if you want to legitimize yourself in this Christian movement, you have to claim like succession in some way from an apostle, either in writing or in teachings or in discipleship or whatever. And that shows you again with John that people regarded John as being somebody who you have to tie yourself to in some way in order to like be legitimized as some kind of a Christian.
Yeah, but John didn't have apostles,
He did actually.
did he?
Yeah.
the Gospels.
Yeah, he had disciples, even in the Gospels. Yeah, he did.
Could you name one?
We don't have any of their names, but there's interactions where they came to Christ and asked him questions.
Apostles of John the Baptist.
Yeah, disciples. Yeah. Because
Disciples of John.
Yeah, so John,
that's new to me, to be
John the
honest.
Baptist, right, was a special kind of guy because technically he was ordained as a prophet before he was born.
Yeah, that's in Islam as well.
Oh yeah, Surah 19. Yeah. Okay, fair enough. That got carried over. That's in Luke, right? So effectively, he's 6 months older than Jesus Christ because actually he's related to Jesus, right, by being Mary's cousin Elizabeth, right? Yeah, exactly. That's the case, right? So effectively, what you see there is that from the time when he was a child, he was actually always a very spiritual person. So he probably had like a lifetime to build up disciples compared to Jesus Christ, who only had 3 years.
Yeah, plausible.
Yeah.
Yeah, plausible. But I don't recollect.
It's in
being-
Luke.
Is it in Luke?
Do you want to see?
No, that's fine. I take what you.
He has disciples. He has disciples.
I'm stating that it's new to me.
Okay,
That's
no
what I'm
worries.
saying, yeah.
There's a lot of stuff in the Gospels that'll be new if you
Yeah,
read them
yes,
again.
of course.
Because you can read. This is the thing. I don't know if you find this about the Quran, but you can read it like a couple of times, right? And then you will see some things the first time you look around. But then when you look around again, suddenly something new like it hits you. And you're like, oh wait, I didn't see that before. Well, that didn't mean what it meant to me before. Yeah, so it's the same thing.
No, that's true. That's true. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you learn something new every day, don't you?
That's what you try to do. That's why I try to do at this park. But sometimes people want to act crazy. Sometimes at the park.
Act
is-
crazy.
Yep.
In what way?
So, for example, I don't know if you saw it a little while ago, but there are crowds here who like to chase people around with cameras. I've seen them do it with Ahmadis. I've seen them do it with with Shias. I've seen them do it with Christians. I personally don't like it.
No,
But
I mean,
it's always a crowd of a bunch of young, like overactive Muslim boys.
yeah.
I personally don't like that.
It's
'cause-
unfortunate,
yeah.
I'd say. People shouldn't act this way. I'm not saying that it's right what they do, but then again, I'm making a judgment about something that I didn't witness.
No worries, that's
So,
fine.
speaking
That's what I
generally
meant.
here.
That's what I meant.
Yeah, I'm taking your words for granted, and I think you're a trustworthy person. So
It just happened before you came, but that's fine. No worries.
I'm
Yeah.
stating that you are. a
That's
trustworthy
fine. That's fine.
person.
No,
But
so
this is the second time I speak to you. I know that from your attitude, from the way you speak, I'm more inclined to not discredit or dismiss everything.
I could be a terrible liar. You never know.
You never know. You never know. But again, I'm more inclined to believing in the good in people.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean that's interesting. The new information about Yahya alayhi salam, John the Baptist, because I grew up with some of John's followers.
So the
Yeah, the Mandais.
the
You call them
Mandais.
Mandians. They call themselves
Mandians. Yeah. I think the Quran calls
they
them
spell-
Sabians. I think
Sabi'un.
the people who sab, who baptize or whatever. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the interesting thing about them being more adherent, I'd argue, to their tradition than the Christians are, unfortunately. Because if you go to the books, for example, let's bring the books, yeah? The books they believe in are still recited in what they think is the genuine Aramaic spoken back at the time, which we don't see the case with any of the Gospels.
So there's no need, right? Because there was no dictation by Jesus Christ telling us to memorize these, right? All of the things that were important that we had to practice, he would emphasize. Like, for example, the communion. He says vehemently, "Do this as often as you can in remembrance of me." From my understanding, the Manichaeans, they believe in something called.
We're not discussing Manichaeans here.
Sorry, the Mandians.
Mandians.
Sorry,
Mandians, yeah.
they believe in something called like aestheticism. So the idea that like you have to adhere to certain practices, which is why they're always doing baptisms. They're vegetarians, to my understanding.
Not really, but they abstain.
They
from
don't drink
certain
wine,
food.
so they
don't
do
drink wine,
they
that's
do everything that John is said to have done, because John was blessed from the womb, so he himself couldn't drink wine or strong drink. Yeah. So they believe more so in doing the practices as like a guide to making you holy. But as Christians, we don't hold that idea. You can't be made holy by practice. You have to be made holy by Christ first, and then do as Christ.
No, that's fine, but they dismiss Christ as the Messiah.
Okay, well,
So
that's their own problem.
Yeah, but I mean, we do have like ancient traditions going back, presumably or arguably, to the time just around that.
Yeah, it would have been late first
probably
century
later
or
on,
early
probably
second
even
century.
before. You never know, because you have a lot of sects, a lot of beliefs. This area was a rich area in theological debates, theological offsprings. You have an offspring of a sect coming every probably 50 years or 60 years. You have as the case with what's it called?
You want to describe it?
Assyrians, was it?
The Essenes.
The Essenes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So they were an offshoot of Judaism, as when you speak to nowadays Jews.
Sorry, the Samaritans.
No, that's not the Samaritans is an entirely different story.
Again, an offshoot of Judaism.
They wouldn't
Mixed
claim
in.
that. They would
Home?
Add me to the group chat.
I have.
I ain't got no group chat.
Sorry, give me 1 second. Give me 1 second.
It's all right if you're busy. I mean, I'm back next week. So
Okay, all right.
We could have a chat next time.
Okay. I didn't get your name. Sorry.
Sarmad. You're not going to remember it.
Sarmad.
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 Yeah.
Easy. Sarmad. That's not fine.
Is it?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd be surprised if you remember me next time.
I'll try. I'll keep it in here somewhere. I might call you like Sad or something, but we'll see. All right. Okay, so I talked with a crowd of rowdy Muslim dudes, and then they went away. And then after that, I engaged in 2 different conversations. And ultimately, the last one was a bit more pleasant than the first one. And we just talked about a few things. My friend Samad learned a few interesting things about who Waraqa was and why I personally don't believe that Waraqa existed. And then after that, we then went on to talk about a few other things, a few other sects, and why I have faith, for example, in the Gospels being the Matthew, Luke, and John, being the authentic Gospels from the disciples, and how we have proof from all the way in the 1st century, 2nd century, 3rd century to support that claim. But we'll talk again next time, and we'll see where it goes from there. But that's me out.